All right, so before I jump in, a little introduction. This is not about me today. This is very much about the work, but I'm Arthur Foliard. I'm a creative director at Koto in New York. I have spent actually 6 years at Koto. I joined when we were pretty small in a co-working space in South London. Stayed there for about 5 years, worked on some of the biggest thing that we have done. And about a year ago, moved to New York to manage and lead our new office, which has been an insane experience. A bit about us. We're Koto. I'm sure you know that. We're a branding studio. We are based in Berlin, LA, Los Angeles, New York, and actually recently Sydney. We're about 100 plus people now, which is insane because, like I said, 6 years ago, we were only six people in the South London sort of co-working space. We got very lucky for the past 7 to 8 years to have worked with some of the biggest brand in the world, which is absolutely insane when you think about it. We feel very lucky. And I think one of the things that makes us very unique and different is also all the services that we do. We have brand strategists, designers, illustrators, photographers, and so on at Koto. And so we tackle any kind of brief, which is absolutely amazing. There's a lot more I'd love to tell you about Koto and the project that we've done recently, like the rebrand of WhatsApp and the work we've done on Replay, walkie-talkie. But you're all here today to talk about Bolt. And I don't know if you know a bit of the background on Bolt. They're a one-click checkout platform and technology. So basically, if you're part of the Bolt network as a shopper, you're going to be able just to buy anything from any kind of their partner in one click. All your information from delivery, the card, your personal information, and so on are all saved. And so it's saving you all the hassle that we get with normal and traditional shopping. I'm going to go through a lot of things. I have more than 100 pages. Hopefully, I'll give you enough detail about the process and how we tackle this. But I'd say that a good way to introduce it is when Bolt approached us, and that was back in April 2022, they had, as you probably expect, multiple challenges. But perhaps, trying to summarize everything into one thing, the most important thing was the lack of a clear vision. And the problem with having no vision at all is you don't really know why you create things that you create. You don't really know your purpose and why people should care. And so for years and years, when you start just to make things for the sake of it, you just end up with something very messy. And you can start to see here the overview of the old brand, where they were trying a lot of things, sometimes more sophisticated, sometimes more bold, sometimes playful, sometimes serious, a lot of different art direction, illustration style, and not really anything that will make them stand out in the crowd. Now, I think the first step to actually create a disruptive brand is to define your purpose, right? If you have a purpose, if you figure out why you exist in the world, it's going to give you a lot of things just to make it different and distinctive at the end on point number 3. I'm not going to go through all of this. Like I said, we only have 35 to 45 minutes, but as you probably expect, there's a lot of work that we do during that phase. There's a big immersion phase. There's a lot of strategy around. But in summary, the thing that we came up with and figure out and the client really agreed on is checkout often causes anxiety. There's anxiety on the merchant side, but there's also anxiety on the shopper side, and we're going to talk about it. But really Bolt, with that technology and that product, they relieve that burden, right? They enable shoppers to break through checkout, but they also help merchant worry less about conversion. They also make sure that merchant will have the shoppers come back because the experience has been so good over time. So really, and again, I'm just summarizing weeks and months of work. Bolt is a liberator. It's a liberator because it's going to help retailer move away from vulnerability, but also help shoppers check out without any hassle. And it starts to actually move into the second point I wanted to go through was if you have figured out your purpose, it's time to actually figure out your audience and who they are. And obviously for Bolt, there's a lot of things that they were doing for merchants. right? When you think about merchant and why they care and why they use Bolt is shoppers will convert more, and you see a really nice stats here. You have a higher rate of repeated purchase. You have millions of shopper at your fingertips because the network of Bolt is absolutely massive. It goes from Forever 21, Fanatics, Casper, and so on and so on. And a big thing that we worked on is a flexible integration. If you're part of the network, it's going to be quite easy for you to actually take Bolt and its technology and just apply it to your checkout platform. But interestingly, actually, from the brief itself, the competition, Fast, Shopify, and Checkout.com, they always just focus on merchant and actually never really care about the B2C marketing of it. They never really cared about the shoppers itself, and they were just using exactly the same strategy that they had for merchant. But of course, as a shopper, we don't really care about repeated purchase. We don't really care about, having millions of shopper around you. The thing that you care as a shopper, then Bolt really defined that, and that's what made them, stand out from the crowd was the effortless checkout. It's all done in one click. You don't need to create any other login on all of these websites. Everything is sorted by Bolt. You have this account, and that's it. Everything in one place, like you said. So if you buy something at Forever 21, Casper, Fanatics, and so on, everything would be centralized on the Bolt. And obviously, it's really important, it's secured and safe. You don't need to get your credit card out again and again and again. But they have something in common, right? From the merchant and the shopper side is the actual lightning fast checkout. And it's quite actually a big deal. It seems like it's kind of expected. Obviously, you've seen the work now, but it took a while to actually figure it out and actually to think that we can use the same sort of strategy and brand ID into the two worlds, the merchant and the shoppers, and figure out also how different they were, because obviously lightning fast checkout for a shopper means something very different for a merchant, was actually the beginning of something really great. So now we have the purpose and we figure out the audience. It's time, and again, we're summarizing everything, but it's time to make sure that you're gonna stand out from the crowd. And probably have figured out by yourself, there are three overall themes, within the Bolt network and world. The network of merchants to shopper is quite a big deal. It's millions of shoppers and hundreds and tens of thousands of merchants. We love this attitude of Bolt being a liberator, removing all the stress from shopping. And there's obviously something about the product. The product is lightning fast, and it's actually the hero of the story. And so it's exactly what we did. For the first creative presentation, we actually came up with three directions that would actually have the three themes. We would just develop up and down story, one of them in the route. So we had a route around the network of offers and merchants coming together. It was about showing how they were connecting people together and how simple it was to show, to get people to come back for repeated purchase. We had a route that was very much focused on the liberator. Shopping has been stressful for years and years, and there's a way to actually do it effortless and bring a bit of that sort of peace of mind for all shopper parent attitude. And then the last one you probably know now, or very similar to the one you know now, is a product. You are called Bolt. You have a lightning fast checkout product or experience. There's so many things that actually make sense for it. And so usually we tend to push for the attitude, but here in product actually makes a lot of sense. They really like it. Now, it's certainly not going to come as a surprise that we picked the last one. But what's really interesting, you're going to see that in a second, is that they also really like the attitude of the second one. The boldness of how straightforward and big and energetic it was. And so they were like, we love what's going on in the third one, but let's just bring a bit more of the boldness of the second one.
Arthur, sorry, is it possible? I think that there's a little bit of a distortion in the sound. It's just started to crackle up a little bit. I'm not too sure if this. Sorry, everyone. We'll just let's see if we can get this sorted.
Is it better now?
That's it. That's perfect.
When did that drop?
Can we just, is it possible just to get back to the first design concept?
Yeah.
I think that's where we were roughly. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, I was wondering why so many people were just asking questions in the chat. I was like, see, maybe it's the French accent. All right, I'm back. Can you?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. It's, you would think that Apple, they're good, but they're probably not that good. All right. So I'm sorry about that, everyone. I'll do it again. It wasn't that interesting anyway, but so we have three things, right? We have the network, the attitude, and we have the product. And it's exactly how we actually tackled the creative, right? In that route, the network, talking about how shoppers and merchants come together as one and remove all the hassle and the stress of shopping. Obviously, we are pushing the network, but we don't forget that there's the product and there's also the attitude as well. And it's about dialing up and down this, making sure that there's a bit of everything into everything that we do. The second one, now you've seen everything, so I'll be quick, is very much around the attitude of the liberator. Now, for, like I said, a long time, shopping has meant stress, hassle, people get very anxious when they do, and whether you're a merchant or a shopper. So here it's about representing, how we are actually just making things very different. And then the third one is actually the product. And the product itself is actually the hero for Bolt. First of all, you're called Bolts. You have a lightning fast product as well. So it made sense to actually build everything around it because it makes total sense. Now, you know it, and I'm going to literally just jump here. They love the third one. They thought they were called Bolts. The product is great. They thought there were so many things that made sense as well. So we actually pushed that route. So this is the final thing here. And I don't know if you heard that because the AirPod were playing funny, but they also really like the attitude of the second route, that sort of like boldness, straight, cut to the chase as well. Let's just remove all the hustle and then literally just, bring both together to create something that feels, completely unique and different. Now, this is the final thing. This is the final sort of overview. This is where we are today, but obviously this is not the end of this presentation. What I thought would be useful is to show you how we move from this world and a bit of this, but this world to here, going through all the different assets of the brand, from the logo, the typography, the color, and so on. Because I think to make sure that your brand stand out, it's also very important to understand the challenge and also the industry that you're working within. So how did we get here? So we're going to start with the logo, because there's a lot of things to say around it. And also there's been a lot of work as well. So we started here, right? That was the logo. Obviously the LT has the lightning bolt. We like the italicized version of it because you had an inherent sense of speed as well and energy. But the feedback was, we like the logo, but we want it a bit more secure and trustworthy. Now, we hear that a lot, but the good thing is they like where it was going. And they thought that maybe the BO and the LT felt a bit disconnected, which was very fair. The LT has so much personality and the BO felt very sort of simple and basic. So let's just work into it just to make it better. Now, it's also very important to look at the category at that time, and it's filled with blue and purple logos. Everyone is doing the same thing. I feel like no one has an opinion whatsoever. And very much what we said to the client is, it is safe and unengaging. So there's a big opportunity here to create something that will stand out and actually just, make the rest look even more boring going forward. Now, we totally agreed from the first one, and this is from a presentation we shared with Bolt, that logo was a hidden gem, because the perfect combination of the name, what you do as a product, and also the concept and the strategy that we came up with come only once in hundreds or thousands. And so you could see the reaction from our team when we actually shared the presentation with them. They were like, we need to work on that logo. This is happening. This is great, and so on and so on. And we thought the logo had a potential to be in that world of, FedEx and families and all of these really smart, subtle sort of concept and symbols that can actually just, be timeless going forward for the next 10 to 15 years as well. So it meant a lot. This is something that we've shared with the client and they definitely agreed. So we started to refine it. You can see a big difference from where we were to where we are. Try to remove a bit of the attitude of it and try to go a bit more serious and trustworthy. We removed the italicized version. We went a bit straight and also tried to make the lightning bolt feel a bit more serious as well. There's a lot of work that we've done also on small scale as well, because most of the time you'll see the bolt logo on the checkout platform as well. So it was obviously working on all the details to make sure that it looked great. Amongst competitor, obviously immediately is better, but still feels bold and serious at the same time. It doesn't feel out of place, but does, bring a bit more of put a bit more emphasis as well. It's probably also because it's in the middle, but definitely felt right for us and the clients. We also had an option too, because I felt that maybe this one went actually a bit too safe somehow. We tried to make it very serious and trustworthy, and maybe it lost a bit of the attitude that we had in the rest of the brand, because it's important that you create an asset that will work harmoniously with the rest, with the typography, the color, and the attitude of the brand. And they came back to us and they said, look, we like both, but we think there's probably a middle ground, of those two versions. There's probably something in the middle where it's not that but it's not boring, but not that boring, but also not that expressive, because, and I totally agree, the number 2 was a bit too much. There's a lot of feedback that they've shared that was actually really useful on how to actually just make it a bit better. I'm not going to go through all the different bullet points, but that's very much actually what we did. So the process was, we spent probably a week or a few days refining. So this is where we were, and you can see at the top, this is the option 1. And we went all the way through from this version to the actual very expressive version that you've seen, option 2, alternate 2. So it's quite a nice little bing, 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 and that thing, because you can start to see how we made it from, not expressive to expressive and so on. And so we actually just kept doing this during the presentation, literally with the clients, because it was actually quite satisfying to see. But what we actually liked and what they liked was right in the middle. Right in the middle felt actually right, because you still had a shorthand. You could use the lightning bolt in the middle and it would feel quite different than, where you were here. But also felt serious and trustworthy, but also had enough personality that it would stand out by itself. We refined it, we actually worked with a typographer to make sure it was absolutely amazing at small size. And so we just ended up, and I'm just obviously cutting through a lot of pages from that presentation, but with the one that The good thing also, and one of the questions they had was about how trustworthy it is. And it's funny because a lot of new startup and brands now go with the lowercase. They think that somehow the lowercase will feel probably a bit more, again, trustworthy and serious, but it's not the case. The reason why you might actually think this is because everyone else is doing it. And so what we said to the client was, actually uppercase, all cap logos are actually things almost from the past. These are the brands that we trust, on a daily basis, the Nike, the Visa, the Samsung. We don't really trust Facebook, but these are, those brands that we know as serious. We know they're big corporation as well. And so to actually put bolt in the middle really helped them as well move ahead with it, which was obviously great to see. Now, color palette is also a big thing here, because you can't just come up with a palette for the sake of it, and because you had this sort of like vision, oh, it's going to be this color. You need to go through a lot of exploration, a lot of conversation with the client. And basically what they were saying about that lime green was, we have to be careful with Bolt EU, the taxi company that is based in Europe. And they also thought that 2 colors, what we had originally, probably wasn't enough for the digital experience and what they wanted to do for, with illustration and so on. So can we actually explore something a bit broader? Completely fine. And we said, look, great, this first exploration, this first creative presentation is very much about selling a vision. We're trying to get you to buy the big idea. Now it's time to refine it. So of course, we're going to add a bit more colors, and we're going to start to think very much about that main color. And it was very important that we had that key color, because in a space where everyone is blue and purple, if you go into a different space, whether you're going to be pink or green or yellow, that's going to make a huge difference. And look, we all know this, Airbnb has the Roush and Vemo has the blue and Klarna, has the pink. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard client mentioning Klarna. It's not about being pink. It's about being different. Klarna understood that everyone was one way and they just went the other way. So it's exactly how we used that example as well to make sure that they understood the power of color. Now, we said it, the industry is made of blue and purple brand. We don't want to be there. If you want to be a leader, if you want to be different, you got to explore something else. Now, you can't really go into the blue, greeny color. And of course, they want to avoid green. You definitely don't want to go, Klarna pink, because, they kind of like own the color, I'd say. And it's obviously, in the payment space as well. So let's just like get away from it. And you're actually left with two ownable color spaces. Now, the first one is yellow and lime, and we really like that because yellow and lime, you have the lightning, you have energy, you have the boldness, but we also don't want to come into a meeting being like, this is what we think, that's it, our way or the highway. We also want to come in with other options and actually have a conversation with the client because we want them to buy the vision. So the red orange also felt right. It's literally the opposite of blue and red. And actually on paper, it feels actually really interesting. So we did that exactly. We came up with what we call the energy orange. And what was interesting with this orange, as much as I think orange feels very, cheap at times, I think there's a way to actually make it feel energetic. If you bring enough white / very light gray, it's going to create this, really nice excitement, energetic sort of combination. And we think it actually works really well with the rest of the secondary palette that we did. And more importantly, in that space and this space, that's where it shines, right? Everyone is looking like that, all around. It's all blue, it's all purple. Okay, there's a bit of a green with Shopify, but that's what you need to look at to actually make this decision, because you want to make sure that the brand you create will feel different in that space. And every single time they'll see either an Instagram ad or a campaign, in New York, London, and Paris, or anywhere else, that's going to stand out and you're going to associate this color with the brand. Then there was also option 2. You've seen that it's the one that they've picked, but lightning yellow made actually a lot of sense, right? Neon yellow, energetic, something that represented the immediacy of the one-click checkout, something that felt also very optimistic, which was very interesting. And they loved that. They didn't think twice. They went straight for it. It felt different enough from bolt.eu, obviously. Worked amazingly well in that space. And what I also really liked is it felt also different among some of the biggest brands in the world. Now, the great thing about this yellow is that you can just double down on it. Every single thing that you do can have the yellow, but it's also nice to create a secondary palette as well around it that will work in harmony with it, but we won't take over that yellow, because you want that to be at the core of everything that you do. You want the yellow as the call to action. You want the yellow at the top of the website. You want the yellow every single way, and you want to associate this color with both. There was also a lot of work that we did on art direction meaning photography and illustration. And we thought that both would work in pair. And for the first creative presentation, we were a bit torn with this, because we knew, and the client said the same thing, we knew that bright flash photography was overused, right? It's something that is very trendy. Postmate is using it. Uber Eats has doubled down on it. But it made sense, right? The flash had this energy that we wanted to display and express, within our lightning fast product sort of approach. But they were like, let's just explore something that feels a bit more unique, something that hasn't been done by the industry. Now, photos, as you probably expect, in that space is very stocky. Everyone blends together. Here you have literally all the competitors at one. You have Shop and PayPal and so on and so on and so on. So there's a big opportunity to stand out. We came up with two options. I'm actually going to start with option 2 because option 1 is what they picked. But we love the frictionless freedom. How do we actually unleash the power of continuous movement, and how we can introduce new product and new people through repetition. There was something quite unexpected in that space as well. Things are always moving. You click and you move on with your life, and you click and you get something else. We liked it, felt very different, but option 1 was the one they absolutely love. Representing the excitement of the one-click checkout through dramatic angles, movements, something that felt quite surreal, was actually really interesting to them. And I felt it was very unique for the space that they're into. So here's an overview of how we did it. So this is one of the photo shoots we did in Berlin, but also what we did with the client is show that you can actually just do it yourself sometimes. And so when we came up with this option, we actually shot a lot of us in the studio trying to understand the angle, because you also want to make sure that going forward, they're going to be able to scale that idea, and they're not going to have to spend 150K every time they want to add another photo. So we had to see a little camera in the studio, and iPhone is doing wonders as well. And so, yeah, just showing, almost like a proof of concept. And they loved it. They loved it because it felt kind of like serious, but also different at the same time. It felt very much like in line with what we were trying to do with the brand itself, lightning fast checkout, this sense of like energy and boldness. Totally also felt right with the new kind of art direction that people are doing, the Postmates, the Klarna, the Cash App, and so on. And the amazing thing with this, and props to the client, is we did everything together. Some of the photo shoots, we just rented a studio in Brooklyn and we shot everything ourselves. And sometimes we just worked with amazing photographers to bring everything to life. But it felt very much like a collaborative approach. Like these product photography that we have right now on the website were shot by our team. And look, it's absolutely amazing. It's fun. It shows that we can actually do it. It's not, we don't have any photographer, in the New York team, but we just went in, the three of us, and spent the day just trying to shoot product that they sent us, and that was it. And we try to make it as good as possible. You can see how, in line everything feels. That's very much product, and they use that on the website today. But there's also a lot of work that we've done with actual, professional photographers on how you're going to represent, the shoppers and the merchants as well. Now, what's interesting about it is you have to think about the thousands and thousands of merchants and people are in millions, but that Bolt have. And there's day-to-day brands. We talk about it, Forever 21, Casper, Fanatics. But there's also, I'm moving that mouse, it's annoying. Also the high fashion brand, they're going after Burberry, they're going after Gucci and so on. So how do you make sure that your brand can flex its voice, but while still feeling on brand? And so it's exactly what we did on those two photo shoots back in November and December. And a bit of an overview here. And then that thinking that we applied to photography, we actually applied it to illustration as well. And we wanted everything to feel harmonious. It's all about consistency as well. You can't have just one way to do one thing and another way to do the other. You want to make sure that when you see, different assets, they feel like they're born from the same big vision. And this is how we actually approach illustration. And so we got the clients involved, and we found someone amazing in Scotland to do it with us. And there's so many things that we have done here just to make it feel on brand as well. So a bit of an overview. Now, there was a lot of work also done on the Typeface. Again, a really good story. And that's why I want to go through all of this, because we thought they had to go bold. When you have something so expressive at this lightning fast or shockingly simple concept, you gotta have the type to support this vision. And we think the type is probably one of the most important assets of a brand, right? It's the thing that you'll always see on the website, on social, etc. There'll be times where you won't see the illustration, you won't see the photography, you won't see the motion, but the type will probably be here all the time. Now, they like the humanity of it. But once again, they thought maybe we went a bit far. Can we actually just try to bring it back and be just a little bit more trustworthy? Now, Our clients was absolutely amazing, by the way. And it's not because people ask you to be more trustworthy that you have to be angry or annoyed. It came from a really good place and they were great and they actually made it so much better. But what we did is we actually brought back all the work that we did on the audits, all the work that we did on the industry. And the thing that we said is, if you look back at the competitive landscape, it was the same for the color and it was the same for the logo. Everyone is doing the same thing, standard and generic typeface. Now, the typeface itself is generic, but also the messaging is also not exciting at all. And when you move from this, where we try to bring a bit more personality and try to link him back to the concept, to this, it's completely fine then to make it just a bit less crazy, because we're still going to stand out so much from them. Now, this is the reason why we went with this. We thought it was great, felt it was different, but true that maybe it felt also a bit retro, looking back at it. So let's just, come up with other options. Now, in the sake of time, I'm not going to show you all the options, but we had 3. We had one that was closer to the first round, and obviously 2 others that were getting closer and closer to the competitor. And the great thing is they love this one. And this one is agrandir as a base. And agrandir is lovely because, as you can see here, it still has really nice quirk. The A is great. The Y is really interesting. The S, how the T and the S come together on that last sentence, last a lifetime. But also worked really well at small size and felt serious when needed to be. Now, we also wanted to move it to the next level. There was something really great about actually bringing some bespoke characters or creating and have kind of a bespoke typeface that will have, the most important sort of symbol and sign of the type, the percent, the currency, the exclamation mark, and so on and so on. So we worked very closely with Pengram. They were absolutely amazing on that journey to actually bring 20 different characters into this type, because we didn't want to overdo it as well, right? I think there's a risk sometimes when you create a bespoke type that people will just overdo it, and it's actually just taking away all the attention from the product. And so here it was about finding the right time and the right moment to actually bring it and keep the rest very functional and useful. I don't know how those videos are playing, but it's very smooth on my screen. A bit of an intro on how we ended up with what we have, which was great. So if you've never worked with Pengram, I recommend it. They're absolutely great. Now, how does it all come together, right? There's still a bit to go, but there's 3 things I actually wanted to share today. Now, it took me actually ages to figure out exactly what to say, but I think, and we think, that consistency is key. Consistency is really, really important, because you want to make sure that every step of the way, we know this is a bolt, and whatever brand you're working on, this is a bolt experience. Right? And so every asset that you create should support the big idea from the beginning, which here obviously was lightning fast checkout. So from the way you approach art direction, the way you're going to approach product, illustration, iconography, and so on, it's important that everything that you'll see from this brand on social media, on their website, on the product, on, like I said, out of home, and so on and so on and so on, feels like this experience. So this is the main thing we actually say to clients. If you go with an idea, just go in and follow your vision. So let's go for it. From the biggest thing that you can actually see, an out of home, to the smallest icon that are actually based on the symbol. You can see at the top, the little shorthand of the logo. Everything needs to feel tied together. It's quite nice also when you approach it that way, because you talk about attention to details with your clients. Yes, of course, you can be bold and expressive, and that's very important. That's the emotive things that will get people involved and interested. But the small things are actually the things that also make a difference in the long run. Now, believe in your vision. It's also very important. If you have that vision, if you have that big idea, you need to go through with it, and you need to get people involved with it. So here the vision is, this is the one-click checkout. It's a lightning fast checkout. Every single thing that you do needs to have a bit of this personality. Now, you're going to say that it's also about flexibility. We're going to talk about it in a minute. There's moments where you need to be big and bold, and there'll be moments where you need to reframe that and think a bit more about the user experience. But the vision is key. And so everything that we have made here for Bolt was trying to help this vision be as strong as possible. So there's a lot more things here that you can see how we just apply that to even the product. See the product, you're a bit more recessive, but you still have this really nice idea of how you scroll. And obviously some of the social that you see on the left are at 150%. Now, vision can only be done by a team. You know, I could have a vision, but if the team, the Bolt team and my team doesn't believe in it, then it doesn't matter. You know, and so it's very important. Hopefully you have seen, you know, through all the examples that I have shared that they had a lot of feedback. They were not sure about this. Let's just do it together. You have to get people involved in that story because that's how they're going to start to trust you and you're going to trust them back. And so for Bolts, of course, you know, the work it is what it is, but it also is thanks to the client and how we actually managed to make them feel part of the team as well as they made us feel part of the team. So follow your vision, but also don't forget that it's a teamwork. And then the last one is, and it's very important, and I think they really understood that, and this is something that we apply to every single of our project. B2B doesn't mean to be boring. You know, the most functional part of your brand, and Bolt made a lot of sense, obviously, with this, need to feel like Bolt. Whether it's the iconography, whether it's the slider that shows the conversion rate, or even just choosing, you know, Bolt over any other kind of checkout, it needs to be, you know, it needs to have the same energy. Now, there's some moments like the actual product and the merchant product where, of course, there's going to be a lot of white, there's going to be a lot of very functional moments, and you need to make sure that the color path accessibility and the icons look good, and so on and so on and so on. But you can start to see a bit of the transition and the way we actually use motion and color just to apply, you know, emphasize and focus, etc. That's how you actually just get it to look that good in that instance. So the content may change, but the attitude must remain the same. And you can see here the work that we have done on the shopper website and the merchant website. The content is really different. Now on the merchant website here, we talk about the value props and why you should use bolts on the right-hand side again, like I said, and you have testimonials and you talk about abandoned cart and how they're fixing this, versus on the left where you probably don't really care about this, but for you as a shopper, what you want is seamless checkout. You want to get everything at once. You have a network of trusted partners and so on. Very, very different, and you're targeting very different people, but you also need to make sure that both feel like they're from the same world. And I think a lot of brands actually don't understand that. It always make that right-hand side feel a bit boring and disappointing. Here's the overview. We're here, and I'll have a bit of time for you and questions. But when we actually look back at the brief, that's the actual brief. The attention of the rebrand had 4 big points. You want to differentiate Bolt from the rest of the category. And hopefully with all of that work I've just shared, it's pretty obvious. You want to make sure that you can stand out on your own and also flex to stand next to our partners. This is very much the work that we did, you know, in the merchant side of things and how they integrate, you know, within other merchants. Build a foundation of the consumer offering. Like I said, none of the competitors were very much focusing on B2C. This is obviously something that we have done really well. And like I said on my last point, consistency, you know, a consistent experience across all the touch points is important. So it's exactly what we've done from the biggest thing that they have to the smallest thing. And so we started to hear about a year and a few months ago. And here where we ended up, but it won't come as a surprise because you have seen about everything that we have shared with the clients. So yeah, a bit more of the recessive thing here. That's it.